Interconnected struggles, Black cis and trans women facing violence and the urgency for solidarity. The increasing violence against Black transgender women, particularly by young Black men under 30 or in their mid-30s, represents a tragic and deeply systemic issue within the Black community. This crisis is compounded by a disturbing trend seen on social media, where straight, cis Black women often question the victim's role in their own death, asking, "What did she do?" These comments reveal the complexity of misogyny, transphobia, and societal conditioning within communities that face historical oppression. The recurring question, "What did she do?" demonstrates a victim-blaming mindset, often stemming from a survival mechanism where people attempt to rationalize violence. In this case, the rationalization is turned toward Black transgender women, positioning them as the perceived other. For some straight Black cisgender women, this might be linked to the fear that these women could be from the same dating pool, young Black men with violent tendencies. It is crucial to dissect the question, are these men truly being tricked or misled, as some might argue, or are they participating knowingly in relationships with transgender women? The reality of transphobia and tricking narratives. By 2024, it is almost undeniable that young Black men, especially those involved in the criminal justice system or street culture, are aware of who they are engaging with in terms of gender identity. The concept that men are somehow tricked into these encounters is largely a deflection of responsibility. This narrative is often rooted in transphobia, designed to portray the man as a victim of deception rather than acknowledging the violence as a reaction to stigma and fear of exposure. Statistics and real-world experiences show that many men knowingly engage in relationships with transgender women, but the stigma of being outed or seen as less masculine leads them to react with violence. The argument that these men are somehow tricked collapses when we consider the environment and social media landscape that provide a wealth of information about trans identities. Yet, it is the fear of losing their social standing, combined with internalized homophobia and transphobia, that drives their violent actions. Cis Black women's involvement in the discourse. Cis Black women's responses to these violent deaths also reflect a complex set of dynamics. These women are often dating from the same pool of men who are criminally inclined, and in many cases, their willingness to rationalize or justify violence against transgender women may stem from their own lived experiences with these men. In a sense, they may see transgender women as competitors or as individuals who take up a space in relationships that is already limited. However, the real issue lies deeper. Black cis women are often also victims of these same men. The same men who victimize transgender women are also the perpetrators of domestic violence, intimate partner homicides, and disappearances of cis Black women. There is a tragic irony in the fact that, by defending or rationalizing the actions of these men, some cis women may be aligning themselves with those who pose the greatest threat to their own safety. The interconnected violence against cis and trans Black women. The violence faced by transgender women of color, especially Black transgender women, cannot be separated from the violence faced by cisgender Black women. Both groups are impacted by structural racism, sexism, and economic disenfranchisement. Both are navigating communities that are hyperpoliced, impoverished, and deeply traumatized. The criminal-minded men who commit acts of violence against transgender women often come from backgrounds of marginalization and dispossession themselves, and this violence is frequently an extension of the violence they experience and perpetrate within their own relationships. As a result, there is a potential connection between the way these men view Black transgender women and Black cisgender women. Both are seen as disposable in the eyes of a society that devalues Black life, and this devaluation is internalized and reproduced in the form of interpersonal violence. The same men who kill transgender women also kill cisgender women, and this shared vulnerability should be a point of solidarity rather than division. Project 2025 and the future of Black cis and trans women. Looking toward the future, we must consider the broader context of Project 2025, a right-wing political agenda aimed at stripping away LGBTQ+ rights, criminalizing gender-affirming care, and rolling back civil rights protections. This policy framework, backed by conservative factions, poses an existential threat to both cis and trans Black women. Under such a regime, the rights of marginalized communities will be further eroded, and the structures of violence that already exist will likely be amplified. For Black cis and transgender women, the challenge ahead will be finding ways to unite in the face of shared oppression. Rather than seeing each other as adversaries, there is a need to recognize that the same systems of power and violence that target transgender women also harm cisgender women. The unraveling of Black women under Project 2025 will be swift if solidarity is not achieved, as both groups will be subject to increased criminalization, reduced access to healthcare, and an escalation in state-sanctioned violence. Conclusion: a call for solidarity. The commentary surrounding the deaths of Black transgender women should prompt a reckoning with the misogyny and transphobia that pervades the Black community, particularly among those who have experienced the brunt of systemic violence themselves. Black cis women, many of whom are victims of the same men who harm transgender women, should consider the broader context of shared oppression. By standing together, cis and transgender women can push back against the societal and political forces that aim to erase them both. In the long term, it is this solidarity that will be essential for survival in the face of ongoing violence and impending political threats.